a map,
Oh,
go
yeah.
from there.
You do paint rock?
I got it from the library budget season.
I've worked for the thousand comes to the mountains.
Oh, it's about enormous water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is for the few hours.
My copy. I don't know, in case there are any copies up there, so I can make copies. Maybe program can. Write them off to this meeting. Copy my painted in. And I'll have the final ones there on the 20th.
That's gonna be a lot of walking for the kid. Walking all the way from Parsons to do all that, and taking the deer.
Oh, Government Day?
I love Government Day. Blast.
Just to get to see
That's okay.
one
Well,
way in the
because
snow.
it's me her and picnic day.
Oh, really? That was such a great experience last year.
Yeah, you're me her picnic day.
Dorothy Wood. Oh, Dorothy Wood.
She's in the zone.
Hi, Katie.
Hi.
All right, council, department heads, we're at that 29 mark, so get those lights green on those mics. All right, council, the clock has struck 30. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, council and department heads and members of public that are either here in person in the chambers or tuning in virtually. I'd like to welcome you to the noticed public hearing for the 2025-2026 budget. Katie, I'd love to pass it to you, so Clerk Tomasic can call roll.
Schumate?
Here.
Cox?
Here.
McNabb?
Here.
Molnar? I was here. Valentine? Walden?
Here.
Wood? Here.
Council, since this is a public hearing, I don't see a necessity to have a motion to excuse absent members, so we'll go ahead and get started. Is there any public comment from those that are here in attendance in chambers? Please approach the podium and please state your name and address.
Wayne Brennan, 30490 South Gibraltar Road. Shuva look-back money, we had 220,000 last year, and you said 170,000 this year. Why aren't we refunding that money back to the people? That should be part of our budget. That's extra money coming in, and I'd sure as hell like somebody to give me a couple $100,000 for my budget, you know what I'm saying? It really should go back to the people. My thoughts.
I really appreciate that. So just to make sure we're addressing the data points there, to your point, last year we got a check for about 210,000
Yeah.
for the look back. This year, that check is looking at about 176,000. Wayne, to your point, we talked about in our last public hearing
And we're
and budget
supposed to get-
cycle.
We were supposed to get $25 back per household too. We've never ever received that either.
Precisely. So we did make the commitment for $25 per household, and we also made the commitment to have the city absorb the GLEVA rate increase, if you recall. So rather than pass on that last rate increase to residents, the city absorbed it. I think the other point I think that's really important is we have a lot of infrastructure that's neglected that requires work in addition to meters. So I 100% hear you on that feedback. Obviously, council here, as they look at the budget and the associated adoption of it at the next council meeting, needs to carefully consider what allocation we have, to your point, in savings, and how we reward our residents
We
accordingly.
also got the highest water rates. There's only, Groseal's the only one that's got higher water rates than we do, and our sewer rates are just about the highest. I was just looking at South Rockwoods the other day, they only pay $4,000 per hundred. We're paying double that.
I think.
Per 1,000 gallons, I mean.
I think we've talked about kind of dissecting the water bill here in Gibraltar, and I know we did a whole presentation on that element. So to your point, a couple things. One, Mother Nature plays a role. Two, neglected infrastructure plays a role. And three, our geographic position surrounded by water plays another role. But it's something that we take really seriously. I think a part of it, just a couple things that I think are really important that you've hopefully heard is our leak detection efforts helps us make sure our system is tight, number one. Two, savings, we're looking at a strategic plan on how we improve our infrastructure, which will further improve the efficiency of the system. And three, we've already signaled where we can savings to our community, and we'll obviously continue to want to do that. As somebody who also pays water bills here in the community, we're on the same page, I promise you that.
You know, just food for thought.
No, I really appreciate it. And that's what the public hearing's for. And so council, I encourage us, I know the water is dissected here in the budget, in the slides that I'll be sharing, but Wayne obviously brings up an important point that I think we're all focused on, which is how do we eliminate the burden on our households here in Gibraltar when it relates to water and sewage.
Mayor, may I say something to that?
Yes, please.
On the sanitary system, from the previous administration to present, all the efforts that have been going into the spot or the point lining on our biggest leaks have proven to pay off. But that's only a touch of it. So we've asked Raines to go back and look at other areas. It's going to require more money, but I think the initial purpose of all this was to tighten that system up. It'll never be 100%, but if we can get the infiltration on the main lines, and now we have to even look at manholes now, amongst other things, to tighten this thing up, I think then you'll see the real savings. But in order to generate that revenue to do that, this is going to be a turnaround for quite some time yet.
Incredibly well said. And Wayne, that's what I agree 100% with your sentiment. And I think I want you to know this administration is fully dedicated to advancing the ball, both on improving infrastructure, on applying savings in a very methodical way to drive long-term return and to reward our households every step of the way.
Previous administrations, we also had valves they were gonna buy that they said the DPW could put in when the water was low. And they never, a lot of them never got done, as far as I know.
I think what Wayne is referring to is the outfall valves. And just to put your mind at ease,
They're expensive, I know that.
so the first round of, in this administration, we were able to secure $1 million for West Jefferson water main, which is something you'll see touched on this evening. So we're securing funds to bring into the city to improve the underlying infrastructure. But to your point, the outfall valves have been a part of our budget request, both in the previous cycle and in this cycle. And as we build our capital in this arena, then we can hopefully apply that, whether it's through the funding we get through grants or our own funding that's responsibly spent to fix some of those neglected areas. So we share the same sentiment, Wayne. Council takes that very seriously, and we're doing everything we can to shift the ship in the right direction on that front. Any other public comment this evening? Tonight is about our public. So we had a study session with council. We've landed some of those action items, and we'll get to work here on the hearing. Before we get started, just a couple things I wanted to lead with. Number one, budget aside, I want us to all celebrate National Police Week. I want to show a tremendous respect, and I know I speak for everybody in this chambers, for the dedication, the service, and the sacrifice of law enforcement across the country. And I know we speak from the heart when we say how much we appreciate Chief Bullard and our Gibraltar Police Department for everything they do to protect and serve this amazing city we call home every single day, especially in light of the incident yesterday. So I hope we can all express our warm felt gratitude and extend our hearts to the law enforcement that make that sacrifice each and every day for us. Second thing I want to say is you'll see this covered tonight in our council meeting, which is at 6:30 following this hearing. EMS Week follows Police Week. So we'll be talking about that this evening. And again, a tremendous gratitude to EMS and all they do for our city. And the third and last but certainly not least is I want to just give a shout out to Clerk Tomasic. We're coming out of Municipal Clerk Week, and so Clerk Tomasic, just thank you for everything you have done and continue to do for the city of Gibraltar. We really appreciate it. With that being said, I'd like to jump into our public hearing. So members of public, I want to make sure we can level set on today's goal is to review a presentation that lays the framework for how we view our budget. I know I speak for probably the entirety of this administration in that we went through our first budget cycle last year together, and we wanted to make sure that we had a methodical process and timeline, which I'll cover. The second thing we wanted to do, to Wayne's point, amongst many issues facing the city of Gibraltar, we want to make sure we had a clear strategy in place that serves as a North Star for how we approach the spend we have. And so I want to walk you through the budget. In this presentation, which you'll see here on the screen here in Chambers, there's going to be 5 different areas we hit on. We'll talk about the process. How do we build this budget and review it together and have public weigh in? We'll talk about the objectives and the theme for our budget proposal. We'll talk about the overview of our finances. We'll talk about the operating changes we hope to implement or are implementing and want to carry through. And then we'll focus on some of the projects that are highest in scope. Tonight is again about our public, making sure that we capture their voice in this process beyond all the feedback we received to date. This first slide, I think, does a nice job, and I commend council and department heads. Special shout out to Finance Director McEwen for all of the work she has poured into this year over year. But the goal was to have a very clear process. And so, council, I'll call to your attention on the screen here, beginning with our Finance Director, as you see internally in March and April, and really building out the revenue and expenditure forecasts and meeting with department heads, to then my review with the Finance Director and Administrator, to then us presenting the proposed budget according to our charter, to then having a work session scheduled for the first week in May, which we had a nice study session on May 5th, a week ago today, to then having a millage and budget public hearing, which is what we're here to do today, and then to look at adopting the budget, which would be scheduled to take place on the 28th, which is our second council meeting in May. So, you know, I commend Finance Director McEwen and council for laying out a very clear framework for how we approach this cycle. When you think about the objectives and the themes that we have in mind, you know, our administration worked on a couple different pillars. One is transparency. Obviously, everything we do in this government arena should be transparent and publicly available. So any resident in this community that has any questions about information has the right to request that. But we want to make sure that when it comes to budget, that we're being proactive and sharing our thoughts and our strategic mindset, and obviously through these study sessions and public hearings, weighing in with the residents to build a finalized budget proposal that is thus approved by this administration. We see it as a policy statement, a way of council directing the trajectory of our financial well-being here in the city of Gibraltar, and a management tool to help keep accountability every step of the way. When you look at kind of how we look at the horizon in front of us, I think the first thing is we want to be prospective. I think this administration has done a very good job at taking what was perhaps areas that were not addressed head on, or areas that may have been a little deficient or neglected, and trying to build a sustainable plan for the long term. And that means making some tough decisions in the near term to set us up for the long term, but we should be thinking long-term horizon, not just about tomorrow. The second thing that I think is important that I think we've done a really good job at is service delivery. We have many amazing professional service partners, from building to planning to legal to engineering to solid waste. I commend this administration for making responsible decisions there, negotiating contracts that are symbiotic both for our professional service and for the city of Gibraltar and that are more financially sustainable, making sure we have the right people in the right seats that help us drive this budget framework and execution every day. The next thing I think we've just discussed is how do we address challenges head on? We want water and sewer focused to meet the needs of fixing neglected infrastructure, and ultimately reducing the burden on our community. We want to make sure when we look at our employees that come here and work hard every single day, that they're set up with the right insurance that is affordable and not sacrificing the quality of care that they deserve. And we want to do that with openness, optimism, and persistence, and not give up on confronting those challenges that we face. Lastly, we want to make sure we embrace technology. We live in a world with technology as an integral part of every single thing we do. And we need to implement technology to drive more efficiency and effectiveness, which again will have a financial impact as well. And we want to do this with service orientation. We want our residents to feel the touch of this amazing small community. We want to be able to communicate with our residents and have them understand why we do and what we do and how we do it. We want to make sure that our infrastructure serves our households across this community. And we want to continue to hold ourselves accountable to the professional service vendors that we have, which are an extension of the City of Gibraltar. Continuing on, I think collaboration is critical. You'll see a couple bullets here. One is surrounding communities. I commend this administration for working with our neighbors in Rockwood as an example to consolidate dispatch, which has a financial benefit to both Gibraltar and to Rockwood while preserving dispatch here in our city. I want to commend this administration for their interface with state and federal officials. There's so many examples of that. But more recently, as we just discussed, on the West Jefferson water main funding, in addition to the funding request we just put in this cycle. I want to make sure that we leverage our community, our residents, and our stakeholders. A huge shout out to the community members that have stood up. I think you can see it reflected in our commissions. You can see it reflected in infrastructure. Shout out to Mr. Sant as an example. People that have passionate, foundational love for the city and a strong set of experience and expertise that can help benefit the trajectory of the city. So just thank you to the residents that have stood up. And most importantly, the employees. The employees are the ones that come here every single day to make the magic happen. And so just a shout out to the collaboration internally. That is a necessity for our success in the long term. We already touched on this in the previous pillar, but really, it's all about maintaining Gibraltar's quality of life and character. And if you think about infrastructure, we often take it for granted. As a resident, you want water coming in and sewage going out. You want those lights to turn on. But there is so much that goes behind that. And so we want to make sure that residents don't feel any interruption to the city services that they're afforded. The taxes they pay must go to delivering the services that we are designed to deliver for them. And I'm really proud of this administration for, despite any challenge we've faced, not disrupting the city services and offerings of our residents and focusing on the long term, which is how do we reduce the burden financially on said residents. We want to be an attractive place to be. We want talent. We want people to love and want to work here in Gibraltar. And I think we have an absolute gem, and I hope that continues in our focus on empowering our people and making sure that we have attracted and retained quality employees across our organization. And lastly, as I would say beat down quite a bit already in this opener, is it's all about sustainability. This world is changing, the economy is changing, society is changing. We can't think about tomorrow. We have to make tough decisions in the near term to drive long-term sustainability. And it involves having a mindset that looks at that longer-term horizon, because you can't set yourself up for that 5+ year success if you're not thinking about those North Stars and how your tomorrow decisions help drive those North Stars in achieving them. And a lot of that has to do with infrastructure. We have a significant deficit when it comes to state of infrastructure relative to financial allocation. We got to get clever, and we got to figure out ways to get it done, and worse first, and garnering for grant funds and outside dollars, and being efficient in our spend like we just talked about with sewer lining. This next slide, now that you've kind of get an understanding of our objectives and themes, how we think about what we do, I want to jump into the financial overview. On this slide here, you'll see in revenues a pie chart on the left, which helps you look at revenues and a percentile across each category. And then for those that don't want the visual pie chart, on the right, you'll see the absolute dollar amounts associated with those revenues per category. This next slide really kind of covers our major revenue sources. So as you see in the pie chart and in the table on the right in the previous slide, property taxes, we're excited to be coming to the table here with a proposed millage reduction. That is a good set of news for our community. And that will be the second year in a row that we're proposing a millage reduction for the city of Gibraltar. We have a taxable value growth of 4.8%. If you look at water and sewer rates, no change to our residents. I know I alluded to that in the opening comment, and Wayne, thank you again for your sentiment. We fully agree, which is we don't want to pass along burden to our residents with water and sewage. And so we did absorb the GLEVA increase for our residents, meaning we don't pass those dollars on. The city internalizes that increase. And obviously, we made a dedication to giving every household back $25 according to the previous discussions here in this administration. The last thing I want to call out is fund balance. You'll see a note here, mostly paid back to land fund, and we'll talk about the balances of different funds and breakdowns here in the later part of this deck. All right, millage history. So for those that can see the slides, in this table, you will see the millage rates. You will see from 2020 through 2025, each year represented in each of those columns, and you'll see the change. And again, we're very excited to be coming to the table for our community with a millage reduction, and you'll see that reflected here in 0.6315 mils on the bottom right corner of this slide. To the earlier discussion around water and sewer, we feel it's always important to recalibrate ourselves to how a bill is broken down. We've done presentations publicly on this topic. Again, we focus on making investments to save the burden on our community. But this will give you a breakdown of how that bill is ultimately generated and each line item associated with that. And for any residents that haven't seen the previous presentation, I know that was publicized online. We're glad to follow up with you on an individual basis, so just don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. And I know Chelsea and the team in the office are always ready, willing, and able to answer questions about any specific household inquiries. All right, let's talk about our fiscal health. These are going to look at bullet by bullet the major operating funds here in the city of Gibraltar. Let's start with the general fund. The good news, it's a good equity position, but we cannot underestimate the future challenges with budgets, especially given the current market considerations. So we are in a good equity place, but we have to constantly be conservative and acute in how we think about the longer term trajectory of that equation. Major street funds. And local street funds, I'll start with major, but they really kind of tell a similar story. Aligned with our infrastructure deficiencies, our roads need work. The good news is we have an operating budget balanced across both major and local street funds, and we have modest fund equity for road and bridge projects. So we look forward to getting to work. I know there's been many discussions amongst this administration and in the Infrastructure Advisory Committee of how we help chip away at the structural needs of our roads and our bridges. A DDA fund. We're in an extremely good position. The focus needs to be on spending that bond down. And as you are well aware in this administration, we have many projects, some of which have already been completed, and focusing on putting that bond money to good work. Capital improvements, voted millage, that operating budget is balanced. Water and sewer fund, we're building a good fund equity. Shuva look back helps us maintain our existing rates. And again, we have a lot of deficiency in our water and sewage. So the sewer lining work has paid dividends, but we have a lot of outdated meters, and a part of our administration is trying to just dissect the data from making sure our system is tight to then advancing to phase 2 and taking inventory of metered usage and repairing and replacing meters where appropriate, so that we're spending those dollars efficiently and effectively to drive return on that investment. Pension funds, a shout out to everybody that's affiliated with those pension funds. We're fully funded. We're in a great spot with conservative assumptions. And lastly, retiree health care, not funded. It's pretty much a pay-as-you-go system. This slide I think is helpful. Could be visually deceiving, but helpful, because ultimately what I want you to think about is the blue bar is our balance. The orange bar is our expenditures. Now, we can talk through this in more detail, but at the end of the day, it kind of helps you reference expenditures to our balance across these different pillar areas. Next slide I think is helpful. When we think about our general fund, our dollars on hand, if you will, similar to the previous slide on revenue, you'll see on the left there's a pie chart. The pie chart breaks down how you make up the sources of our general fund in each category with the percentile. And then for those that want to see the absolute dollar amount, you'll see that reflect on the right side of this graph. General fund expenditures, so where are we spending those dollars? And you'll see here again on the left, it'll show you in a pie chart format percentile breakdown of those expenditures, and on the right you'll see the absolute dollar amounts. You'll see obviously at the top of that list are public safety and public works, again critical for what our residents expect from us each and every day. All right, so where do we want to go? Given that I've kind of capped off with an overview of where we're at, I think when we look at the themes, here's a couple things that I think this administration is really wanting to double down on. I think one is making sure we work on spending down that bond money from our DDA. Parking lots, the roof discussions we've had, generator, all the walking bridges, pump station, everything that was on that prioritized list, making sure we execute against those projects, and allocating DDA funds to the projects. Solid waste is in its own fund, and we've allocated $25,000 for chipping and administrative work. And then lastly, I think as we've discussed pretty exhaustively to date, and obviously in this hearing tonight, we're trying to build a very objective understanding of our water, our sewage, and our roads, and have strategic plans that allow us to tie dollar allocation to execution across those deficient areas. And I think we've made a lot of progress. The West Jefferson water main will represent the third water main replacement over the time that we've been together. Sewer lining work continues with recent sewer lining work in the past week. I know the team has been hard at work in patching up where possible through DPW some of the roads and deficiencies in the near term while we build some of the long-term plans. In addition to all the work we've done on things like the pump station, which obviously has a lot of downside risk if things were to go wrong in that area. Upcoming projects, additional funding for sanitary sewer lining. Obviously, that's a savvy investment because our sewer lining efficiency allows us to then achieve look-back reports, which at the end of the day, very simply put, is a check back in our account. So we're continuing to double down on that investment. DDA project funding, you'll see the $620,000 bond surplus, which again, the teams have been prioritizing execution of prioritized projects against. Horse Island Bridge, I know we've been working very closely with the engineer and the Infrastructure Advisory Committee to dissect the data and to make sure we have a clear path that is, I would say, financially responsible for addressing the Horse Island Bridge, amongst the other bridges that we've seen in our inspection reports are in poor and critical condition in some cases. Pursuing federal funding, again, we've put in every request to any party that will listen. We had success last cycle. I sure hope we have success this one. But things like, I would say, stormwater and flood control, obviously water mains, bridges, such as the one over Frank and Poet. We continue to try and recruit dollars outside beyond making savvy decisions with the dollars we do have. Continuing execution of our lead and copper activities. Just a hats off to the team for not only inspecting and obviously locating lead lines, but then obviously evolving that to executing the replacement of them. So I know the teams are hard at work recently and making sure we transition to that execution phase. And then obviously the West Jefferson water main is captured here and making sure we pull that project to fruition, which is on our council meeting later tonight. So council and members of public, I want to give you a flavor of kind of how we think about the framework for the budget, what drives us, where we see opportunity, and then where we stand from a financial perspective. I feel like I'm really grateful and proud of Finance Director McEwen for everything she does to hold us accountable and be conservative and responsible in how we allocate dollars. I want to thank department heads for holding accountability within their budget and council for laying strategic foundations that help us build long-term success for the residents that we serve. So that's the budget presentation. I'll stop there before I hand it over to Finance Director McEwen, see if there's any questions, comments, concerns. Okay, well, maybe Finance Director McEwen, I'd love to pass the floor to you, and I'll stay up here just in case there's anything I need to address via the mic.
Okay. So basically, not much has changed from our study session. In general fund, we're now using $67,000 from our fund balance. I bumped recreation up a little bit by $4,000 to help with like different things that we're planning in the upcoming year. Rob and Austin and I had a pretty productive meeting on all of that. So we're still pulling fund balance for general fund. My biggest caution with general fund is that we don't really have a lot of extra revenue in there for capital improvements, and that would be very helpful because a lot of the equipment and stuff for such as DPW, fire, police, usually a portion of that all comes out of, if not all of it, out of the general fund. So that's the only caution I would issue on that. Land fund is basically our savings fund. Our fund balances in both major and local roads has been mostly, we've been building them up for bridge work. We have a lot of bridges in the city of Gibraltar. DDA mostly, we got to get that bond spent down. We have like a little over 12 months to do that, and that has to happen. Cable, the funds are going down on that, just the way of the world. More and more people are switching to streaming. Both of our bonds are looking good, and we're some of the reason why I was able to lower millage rates. We do have quite a savings in our water fund balance right now to put towards capital improvements. And then our pension funds are fully funded except for the healthcare, which healthcare has been increasingly going up. It's been a trend that we have been seeing year after year. It's just going up. I don't know if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns.
While council's thinking there, Amy, just thank you for carrying through on some of the actions we had from our study session. I know you just highlighted some of those, so just appreciate you for closing the loop on many of those. Well, while you're thinking, I had a chance to speak with some residents recently because I heard a lot of feedback through office hours and other forums around taxes. Why are my taxes going up? It's not sustainable for me and my household. And so I worked with the assessor. I just want to kind of break that down. I know it's a little off topic, but very relevant to the discussion we're having today. And what I wanted, and I explained this to the residents I had a chance to speak with personally related to their individual situation, is if you think about taxes, the increases you have are based on consumer price index and inflation. City has nothing to do with that decision. By law, there's a mandated increase annually that's passed on to the residents, and it's capped at 5%. So the way they calculate this is looking at the consumer price index or inflation, and then figuring out what percentile is then applied to the household accordingly. Again, capped at 5%. So I just wanted to kind of call that out as a situation. Obviously, there's a lot of bigger discussions there, and I'm just being very simple in that synopsis. But what I would tell anybody that's listening, who has the sentiment around taxes and increases, is that we do have our board of review. And that's a board of your peers. They're able to review your individual household tax situation. So if you feel that you'd like to appeal your taxation amount, the reports from our assessors come out in February, and then the board meets in March. So just planning to see with you all. The next cycle will come up, obviously, February and March of 2026. And for those that wanted a little more intel on where those percentile increases come annually, it's not a city decision. It's based on the metrics I mentioned and is mandated by law. And if you want to appeal your individual household situation, that window will open up for you in March of every year through our board of review. So just want to plant the seed while folks were thinking about any questions you have for Finance Director McEwen.
And it also impacts the millage rates for general government because we do have a Headley rollback, and depending on how bad inflation is, it impacts it. That's why you see no change between 22 and 23, but then you see a slight drop in 24 and 25, just because inflation was so high then that that was the only time I ever saw no change. But it calculates out the inflation based on our taxable growth, our taxable decreases and everything like that. And then we have a whole formula that we input, and then we times it by our millage rate, and it goes down a little bit each year for the general government. One of the things that happens that do cause taxes to increase is when people's houses on cap. So I always joke about this. My mom bought her house for $22,000, and the next person who owns that house, they're selling for $220,000. So when they get their first tax bill after it on caps, it's not going to be pretty.
Correct, and that uncapping would set a new baseline in that circumstance, which would then
Yes.
you would apply those annual increases as I described. Council, any other feedback? I know this is all about the public. Public, any other feedback for council as they consider the budget in front of them? Again, next step will be to take all of this discussion, and it would converge on council, your action to adopt the budget on the 28th, which is our second meeting this month.
So I would like to ask anyone in council if you want to have a private discussion with me, or if there's anything that you want to email me about and get answers to. I still have time to modify this a little bit, but I don't have that much time because I have to make sure I get this to Katie and get in our packet. So if there's any concerns, questions, comments that you can't think of right now, if you could please just direct them to me throughout this week. And that way I can review and see what we can do for the upcoming meeting on the 28th, when we have to adopt both our millage rates and our budget per charter.
And for any residents that are not able to be here tonight, feel free. All of our emails are listed on the website. Feel free to reach out with any questions. I know many of you have our cell phones, and we have office hours. So there's no shortage of forums for you to vocalize any questions you have, even if it's just for clarity and not to ask for evolution. So
Yeah, and they can call me too, or email me. I'm best at email. I respond to email. But you can contact me as well if they have any questions too.
Awesome. Well, I will open up to public comment. I know we've given a kind of fluid chance for that, but any public comment this evening? All right, well, we did start this meeting at 5:30 to allow time to make sure we didn't push into our council meeting. It is 6:02 according to me. So, council, we're going to go ahead and adjourn this public hearing. You'll have 28 minutes or 27 minutes to have any bio breaks or discussions, and then we'll begin our council meeting promptly at 6:30. Thank you all so much.
Hey, Anthony, how are you?
Need to go make some phone calls.